we go. All right. And so one of the things I want to make sure you guys know and are aware of, you might not need it on your ship. Even on this ship, it's probably not going to be a big deal. But if I select the ship object, right, the ship body, and I hit 2 for edge mode, right, we do have a few triangles here, right? There's a triangle there. We had a triangle here. So one of the things you can actually do to get rid of triangles sometimes is really just kind of add an extra edge loop through an area, right? So I could always just, take this edge out, right, delete, dissolve edges. And this does leave us with basically kind of an n-gon through here, right? But I could actually add a small loop up into this triangle, and that would actually turn this into a quad, and then we could connect these up into quads. Now, one of the things you can also do to adjust and play with this is select a specific edge, right? And if you right-click, there is a tool called rotate edge clockwise, right? And what this will do is you'll see, I'm going to just use a quick key for it. It rotates it around to have different configurations. In this case, I don't think this is really going to solve what we want it to solve on this one for us, but it is an option you could use, right? So I could kind of rotate this one a little bit to move it around. And you see how if I kind of keep selecting different edges, I can kind of rotate around to give different configurations, right? And then we could even take, these 2 edges, delete, dissolve edges. And you see how that kind of took that out for us? So that is one way to do it, right, is kind of that rotate. Like I said, you guys might not need this. You probably won't even need this, to be honest. But I figured it'd be kind of cool for you guys to see that you can rotate edges, right? That what it does is it basically, if you just right-click, rotate edge clockwise, it's basically just kind of spinning that edge to have different configurations on something that already exists. And I could keep doing this to move triangles, right? So see how I can kind of keep spinning? By picking the edge in the direction I want to move it, I could spin it to kind of have different configurations. Now, like I said, in this case, I don't think we really need this for this one. These triangles will be quads anyways momentarily. But it is kind of neat to know that you can actually change your loop flow directions a little bit by spinning an edge. Now, this doesn't create anything new, right? There's no new vertices created. There's no new polygons created. It's really rearranging this section, right? So see how it's not creating any vertices? It's just kind of connecting this edge to vertices that already exist around the surface. But it does have the very cool effect of allowing us to kind of change loop flow. So like an edge loop direction can go a slightly different way. You can even use it to move triangles around. In this case, I feel like probably an extra edge loop through here is more useful. So I can just select this edge. Remember, there's kind of this triangle right there, right? And I can delete, dissolve edges, right? It's usually a good idea to use when you're getting rid of edges or edge loops, use dissolve edges instead of delete. And then I could always do loop cut, right? But you see I'm doing a loop cut kind of into this triangle up here, but also down into this n-gon I've created. Like I said, this is one of those things you might not even need, right? Because you might not have these triangles, or maybe you just have one triangle. Honestly, even those triangles themselves weren't causing any major shape issues. You're always going to have a few stars on a model, so really wasn't the end of the world to have like 1 or 2 triangles there. But I do want to show you guys how you can kind of go about solving these things sometimes by either spinning to move them around, if you need to, right? You guys might not need to on your ship. But also just sometimes adding an edge loop through here, right? This edge loop turned this triangle into a quad. And then I can select this vertex and this vertex, hold down right mouse button, and remember we have that connect vertex pairs feature, right? And that actually takes that and turns it into quads. And you see we just have a little more of an edge loop structure in here we could use if we want to for shape, right? But it's not all quads. We have a little more geometry there. So just keep that in mind as you start to build stuff up and work. You might look for opportunities to kind of rework stuff like that. Like here we have this big star there. You might not have it on yours, but you can always, try using V to spin the edge, right? Actually, that's a quick key I set up, right? It's the rotate edge clockwise. But that is in your edge context menu, right? Now that does change the loop flow through here a little bit, right? I kind of like the flow I had there. So it might be this edge we try to rotate, right? So So you can always kind of try to rotate these around to give different configurations to see if you like that better. And actually, I kind of think that that works a bit better for us right there, right? It's kind of gets rid of that star's not quite as big. It's kind of got more of a flow through there. All right, so I think that'll work well enough. But you can always kind of use these tools to kind of change loop flows around, adjust forms a little bit. It's kind of up to you on how far you want to push it, right? I can bring this edge back in a little bit. All right, so I just wanted to kind of show you how you have that spin edge tool, right, or rotate edge tool. Just select an edge context menu, right-click, rotate edge clockwise. Like I said, you might not even need it, right? But sometimes it can allow you to kind of maybe make a star less pronounced, right? This was a 6-star before, and now it's actually a 7-star before. Now it's a 6-star, which still puts it in better shape. But usually you want to try to kind of have not a lot of 6-stars in your model. Some 5-stars are pretty natural, but I feel like that 6-star is not causing us too much of a hassle there, right? Shape's looking fairly good for it. All right, but these are just some of those ways that you can kind of take advantage of reworking your shapes a little bit. Figured it'd be cool for you guys to see that if you need it, right? Like I said, we can even try it a little bit more here, right? 2 for edge mode. Rotate that one if we want to a little bit, just to see if we can find some different configurations there. It really kind of depends on what you're looking for and the kind of edge flow you want. Might try that edge instead, rotate. Yeah, I'm kind of feeling like we'll survive with that 6-star there. All right, but just kind of trying to point out, you know, we'd always want to try to have as few large stars as possible. You know, the occasional big star, if it's not really hurting your shapes and it's not animating, right, it's not deforming, shouldn't usually be an issue. But just sometimes kind of adding an edge loop or deleting an edge where it's a triangle, or rotating, right? Rotating edge clockwise can kind of be a useful kind of way to explore different configurations for this stuff. All right. So I figured just kind of highlight some of those options available for you to rework your ship if you need them, right? This might be something you don't even need. I just want to highlight that a little bit for you guys as options. All right. So at this point, we're kind of ready to kind of finish this up in a lot of ways, right? I want to show you that feature. But now one of the things we could do is we could go back and kind of turn on our visibility stuff, right? And we could always kind of convert our vertices here, right? So I can kind of, and you see how I didn't convert these yet, so. Oh, I see it, you're good. Thank you. All right, so basically at this point, right, the nice thing is we kind of left our curves where they were at, right? And we can still edit them. So remember, I didn't convert the curves yet just because, hey, I might want to make adjustments here, right? But when you're ready to convert your curves, right, you can go to 4 for object mode. There is a right click, right? Remember, we right click its object context. And you see there is a convert to mesh, right? And what that does is it actually converts your curves to meshes, right? So I'm going to go back up here. One of the things you might check too is go to your curve, your green curve properties menu, and probably just make sure things like your resolution preview up here down to like 2 or 3, and your bevel resolution's 2, so it's not going to be quite as dense. But when you feel like you're done editing your curve, right, you don't have to do this yet either because you might not be quite there yet. You might want to still adjust your curves. But to make them actual proper geometry, right-click, right, to brings up your object context menu, and I'm in object mode, right, 4 for object mode. Right-click, there's a convert to feature in the object context menu, right? Remember we saw this a bit when we were doing things like our screw modifier to do kind of our revolve for our columns. And we also saw this for our curves when we used them for ropes on our chandelier for our previous project. So once again, we've actually seen this feature before, but it's always great to see these things multiple times, right? You might not even have pipes on your ship, right? So some of this stuff is just good for you guys to know. You might not need it on this project. But convert to mesh, right? Because we want to take this curve and the bevel it's got and actually turn it to proper polygons. And then you see there's actually a proper polygon structure there. So just kind of a few more things like that. I'm going to save as really quick so I can say this is version 8, right? There we go. So kind of a good shape there, right? And the last thing we wanted to do was really, I'm going to go back to my blue wrench here, right? 'Cause remember, our blue wrench is where our modifiers are at. And we can see that if we go to 3, if I was to actually turn off like the subdivision modifier, right? Get rid of it. So that's really low res. It's really blocky and low res. That's because we were working in subdivisional surfaces mode, right? So we can see that the low res doesn't look nearly as good as we want it to. Remember, that's part of our subdivision surface modifier rounding the shape off. Remember, one of the things you can do, though, is apply this. That's why we've been working in it, because we knew we were eventually going to apply this. You always want your low-resolution mesh to look pretty nice, right? So some people say you should never use a subdivisional surface modifier because of that reason, right? And, you know, you go back 15 years ago, particularly for video games industry, and that made a lot more sense. But where we're at with a lot of video games in the video game industry, in the PlayStation 5 era, with film, this mesh is not going to be terribly dense, even if we apply a subdivision surface modifier to it. So what we're doing is we're saving ourselves time. Instead of having to add every edge loop in by hand to make this nice and rounded, or start with denser meshes that can sometimes be trickier to shape, we keep the mesh simpler, but give that kind of rounded subdivisional surface preview of it. And remember, we can apply these modifiers, right? So we go to the blue wrench, and I have the modifier tools up, so I can do apply all. Remember, that's in edit, preferences, add-ons, right? And if you type in, if you go to this magnifying glass up here, you can type in mod. And you see one of the options is interface modifier tools. You can check that on. And when you go to your blue wrench, right, in your property editor over here, the blue wrench one, you'll see you'll have these. So if you notice you don't have those, that's because you didn't turn the add-on on, right? You don't need it. You can actually go and apply these all at once, right? So I could go down here or apply them one at a time. Right next to the X for these modifiers, because if you just want to get rid of the modifier, you click on X. If you want to change the order, you can actually grab on the dots on the corner here to change it, right? And you see how if we put the subdivision above the mirror, kind of the seam along the center gets sharp. So your subdivision should usually be below your mirror. But right next to that X is kind of a little V that points down, right? That's usually in a lot of software, but in Blender specifically, that indicates that you can click on this, and there's options like apply. Now in this case, you can see that if I apply that first, it doesn't apply, the seam gets sharp again. So you actually want to apply your mirror first, then your subdivision. And now if I go to 3 to see face mode, that's actually what our low res looks like. See how our low res looks nicer now? If I wanted to do further detailing or smaller parts to this ship, I could, right? Remember, if you want to set up a mirror again for this, right, you could always delete half of this mesh and then apply the mirror modifier. Remember, there is the add-on, right? Edit preferences, add-ons. I'm going to go up to the magnifying glass here, type in MESH. Remember, we've seen these several times. We used this a bunch on our previous project. We've seen a bit here. Remember, there is auto mirror, right? I like edit mesh tools, loop tools, auto mirror on because I get things like circle, flatten, cut faces. There's some cool some cool tools that come with these add-ons. These come with Blender. You don't have to download them anywhere. They are included in Blender. You just got to make sure to turn them on, right? Auto mirror in particular is the one I wanted to check on, because then I can go back to 4 for object mode. And remember, right up here, right next to kind of our little view compass, right? There's that little kind of preset viewport feature where it's got our Z, our Y, our X. It's got the outliner here. There's this little V right here, right? And it points to the left. If you click on that to open it, you'll see that it brings up these tabs. And if you go to the edit menu, you'll see that B surface is usually open by default, so I close that, but there is an auto mirror feature that you can open up. And what's cool about auto mirror is it will automate the mirroring process. It'll delete half of it and then create a mirror modifier. I like to turn toggle edit and editable on and then do auto mirror. And you see how it absolutely kind of just deletes half of it, mirrors it over, and you'll see symmetry's working again. So auto mirror is really, really cool for doing stuff like this. I recommend having it available as an add-on. It can usually simplify the process of cutting a mesh in half and mirroring it. Otherwise, you just have to delete half of it and then just go to your add modifier mirror, which is not terribly hard, but auto mirror does make it a little easier. So I figured, hey, it'll be great to talk about that feature again, right? So now at this point, we just want to kind of maybe start to segment some parts of the ship up a little bit. So if I want, I could go to, say, 2 for edge mode. If I wanted to, I could maybe double left click on this edge loop, right, kind of going through there. And then maybe I could shift double click on these edge loops right here. Well, maybe not that one. Kind of feeling like that's fine for now. We'll just do this one. Double left click on that edge loop. If you right click, right, remember right click brings up your context menu. This is your edge context menu. There is a feature right below loop cut and slide called offset edge slide, right? Come on, there we go. Trying to remember if I have to actually use it. I rarely use it actually. Come on. Offset edge slide. Why are you not working? Oh, there we go. Okay, so right click, offset edge slide. Oh, my bad. Offset edge slide, just left click drag, right? And you see what it does. You tell how often I use this tool, right? I use it sometimes though, like for this stuff, right? Offset edge slide, what it does is whatever edge loop selected, it will actually create 2 new edge loops next to it that it slides in equal distance from each other. And this can be a cool way to kind of add this little bit of paneling here. I can double left click on that center edge loop again that's created from that. And way down here is a tool, kind of at the very bottom of our left one. It kind of looks like a checkerboard cube with arrows pointing out the top, left, right. It's kind of at the third from the bottom. If I click on that, that's shrink. And what it does is it basically lets you grab on this yellow tool, the yellow handle, and it actually moves your selection along its normal directions. So we're used to extruding along normal direction, but you can actually move along normal direction as well. And then if I want to actually truly separate this, I can right click, bring up edge context menu, right? That's where the offset edge slide is. And there's actually something called edge split. What that does is it unwelds that edge loop. If I go to 3 for face mode now and I select linked, you see how it only selects those now because I've unwelded that edge loop. So I'll just do this one more time on the back part of the ship here. Let's quickly turn some of those off. Remember, you can always turn them off here. Shift-I is actually isolate select, which can be useful for this as well. And I think we'll do this edge loop right here. 2 for edges. Double left click on that edge loop right there. Right click for edge context menu. Offset edge slide. And then just left click drag. And you see how it's kind of not quite a bevel, but almost like one? It basically takes that edge loop you have selected and it makes 2 new ones next to it that it slides away from it in equidistance. Then I could double left click on that center edge loop again. And then way down here is that shrink tool. It's kind of way down here at the bottom. And then I could left click drag to pull that in, and that moves your edge loop along normal direction. So this could be a cool way to kind of pull these in a little bit. And then, of course, right click for edge context menu. It's a lot of right click, right, for edge context. And there's this edge split feature, right? This will unweld these edges or edge loop. And you can see how we can slowly kind of break this up into a few chunks. right? Kind of depends on how far you want to go with it. I think I'll do just a little bit more here to finish this off, and then we'll be done, because basically the ship will be done. So I could double left click on this edge loop here, right click, offset edge slide, just so we get some good options of this. Left click drag to kind of bring that out a little bit. Double left click to select that. Use that shrink tool again. Now, middle mouse button will actually, of course, grab that yellow handle. Then, of course, I could right-click edge context, edge split. That unwelds it. Same thing over here. Double left-click to select an edge loop, right? Right-click to bring up your edge context menu. Offset edge slide. So this will be like the 4th time we've seen this today. Left-click drag, and you see how it creates kind of 2 new edges from that original, that it kind of slides away from the edge in equidistance. And then, of course, I could double left click on that center edge loop again. And that shrink tool right here. I can grab the yellow handle, of course, but I can also middle mouse drag. And then a right click for edge split. And now we can see if I go to face mode and I do select linked, you see these are all separate parts now. So even if they're all still one object, they're still technically parts, though. So it's kind of neat to see some of these features, right? If I go to 4 for object mode, you see how there's like more noticeable segmentation here now. Right, we don't have to go crazy and segment every part of this, but if you wanted to have noticeable paneling built into the geometry, this could be kind of a cool way to do it, right? We applied the modifiers, so we had a denser base mesh. We use that offset edge slide feature, a little bit of that shrink feature, edge split. Kind of a neat tool, kind of a neat feature, right? And just to show this off, I'm going to bring up back our curves. If I go right here, right, there's kind of this little menu right up here at the top. That's kind of looks like 2 circles crossing. One's a white circle, one's kind of a hollow circle. If you click on that, there's a feature called statistics. I could turn that on, and you will actually notice that the overall total triangle count in this scene for this object, including the pipes, the thrusters, everything, is 15,000 triangles. That is not dense for just about any pipeline out there. Most cars and video games, particularly if it's a racing game, are a couple 100,000 triangles nowadays, right? A couple 100,000. You could easily get 15, or honestly even more like 30,000, 40,000 for even cars in an open world game, right? Characters are way above that. The new Ratchet and Clank game on the PS5, the character base meshes without their fur systems are like 200,000 triangles, right? 15,000 triangles is nothing, right? So if you're kind of like, oh, this is too dense, not in really any pipeline that exists anymore. Maybe for the Nintendo Switch, right? So honestly, I could probably put another subdivision modifier on this, do more modeling, apply that, and we'd be at 40, 50,000 triangles. So this is not a dense mesh, and you could see the actual benefit to working with the subdivisional surface. You just don't have to work as hard, right? You don't have to put all these edges by hand to have it look good in low res. But you do want it to look good in low res, right? We just used the subdivision surface modifier as a shortcut. And we still didn't end up with a terribly dense model. All right, I think that'll be a great place to stop, but that is officially the ship finished. All right.